Hi, my name is Dan Monheit, and this is Uncommon.
This podcast is brought to you by Neuralle Media. Are you an entrepreneur or marketer who needs help making podcasts, video, or animation? Perhaps you don't have time to manage a freelancer or the budget to deal with an agency. Well, Neuralle Media can help you with simple and affordable content creation, saving you time and money by taking away the pain of producing that content. To learn more, head to neuralle.com/media. That's neuralle.com/media. Play around with our pricing or request a callback directly. Listeners to the show receive a special discount by using the promo code UNCOMMON. Welcome to another episode of Uncommon. My name's Jordan Michaelides and I'm your host. In this episode, I have for you Dan Monheit. Dan is the co-founder and director of strategy at creative agency Hardhat. He's the co-host of the Bad Decisions podcast, MC of the lecture series Real Big Things, and a self-confessed sneakerhead. From small beginnings, lecturing at Monash Uni, to jumping straight into his own agency, Dan is full of that entrepreneurial spirit we see common amongst our guests. And I think when you couple that with running a podcast, a series of lectures that have quite a fascinating premise, and then of course running the strategy of Hardhat, you have an immovable force in agency land and someone that I love to get in to talk about the happenings regularly of media and the world of agencies. There's a lot covered as per usual, including being Benjamin Franklin, talking at South by Southwest, changes or recent changes at Hardhat, the Bad Decisions podcast, sneakerheads and sports cards, and learning from cognitive biases. If you like the episode, do leave a rating on your podcast app or a shout out if you like that. Leave it before next Thursday. Recent thanks to Choose One Oz and Gabrielle Dennis. Love reading your reviews. Thank you guys so much. If you want to share with your friends, take a screenshot, post on your Instagram story, and tag us at uncommon_show, which has recently changed. If you want to watch the episode in full, you can just search Uncommon Podcast on YouTube. And don't forget, of course, to like and subscribe. Show notes and all previous guests are at neuralle.com/podcasts. With that being said, thanks for listening, guys. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation with Dan Monheit. Dan, we're live. I can't clap for shit. How are you?
That's okay. We all have development areas. You work it out.
Have you been Benjamin Franklin lately?
I have not been Benjamin Franklin since the last time I was on this show.
Okay.
And unbeknownst to me, I was indeed Benjamin Franklin. I think you asked me to bring you some pens.
Yeah.
Which I did.
And you bought me another one this time.
I did.
And there is a bit of scarcity now to these pens. So you know you're a special someone if you're getting the deep yellow pen.
It's true.
Yeah. They are brilliant pens though, to the point that I went and bought a pack of 20. Although I am disappointed. Maybe it's just Amazon, but like I feel like these things are becoming harder and harder and harder to find.
These have actually been discontinued. So we've been distributing these pens for like 6 years now.
Okay.
And the people we buy them off think we're a stationery store. Like, who would buy so many pens?
Really?
But all new business meetings, any events we do, we've got these little moleskin books and these fancy yellow pens that we do. And they're discontinued, and we have not found a suitable replacement. So if you're a pen enthusiast out there, let us know.
Now, you've been very busy. I think last time we caught up it was October. You were just heading off to South by Southwest.
Yeah.
The talk was, am I right in saying it was an ad guy and a psychologist walk into a campaign?
Yeah, that was the talk.
Okay, so you and Mel gave this.
Yeah.
What did you learn? What happened?
So the first thing that I learned was that if you are going to submit it's funny because I learned this and then I've immediately screwed it up for my submission this year, but if you are going to submit a talk for South by Southwest and you want a lot of people to come to the talk, title the talk something that starts with A, because there's like 5 million things in the program and we were like first. And then I forgot for the topic I've submitted for next year. So anyway, hopefully somebody else can benefit from that.
Okay.
So that was my biggest learning out of the pre-South by experience. As far as, South by, for people that haven't been before, it is a huge, I guess, festival, you would call it.
Like a media technology.
So it's been running for, I think, maybe 30 years in Austin. And it originally started as a big music festival, and then film got added, and then maybe 10 or 11 years ago, the digital/interactive got added as well. And so there's like hundreds of thousands of people that converge on Austin, and it's wild.
Yeah, and the who's who of business and tech is always there. But over time, it's sort of become apparent to me how much media and influencers, not influencers, but influence,
in the actual sense of the word,
has become part of it. Like, it's a real, to say you're going to South by Southwest, it's like it's legit. Like, a lot of people really, from a status perspective, love to put that out there. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, it is by far the best of that type of conference.
Yeah.
Where you've got the interactive bit is 5 days, and every day there are, say, 6 or 7 slots, and every slot there is somewhere between 60 and 100 things that you can choose from. So whether you want to know about bots and automation or brand or government or sport, or it is just completely overwhelming. And that's just the programming side. Then there's like the networking side and the social side and the partying side. Like, it's nuts.
And when you go over, do you typically go for like a week or?
So I get there, I do the 5 days of South by, finishes on a Tuesday.
Okay.
Wednesday morning I leave and I go to a city somewhere in the US. So this year we did San Fran, last year was Portland, before that was New York. And in the 2.5 days of the remainder of that week, I will line up as many meetings as I can with agencies, just to go and see, and
what
we've been into RGA, and we've been into Goodby Silverstein. Like, we've been everywhere that I've wanted to go, and people are very open to taking you around and telling you about their stuff. And
what have you learnt from that in particular about? Have you seen things that may be trending over here in a few years from now that you look to integrate, or do you find, like, because the industry is so homogenous already, that it's already happening over here in Australia?
So I've learned so much from doing this. So it's worth noting, like, this is Hardhat is my first job, right? Mm-hmm. So I haven't worked in another agency. I'm almost 15 years in now. So this is a huge educational thing for me. And every agency we go into, we learn something. It might be something really small. Like, one agency we went into, I just remember seeing their project Kanban, which is just like a table, and every column is a different stage of where a project is at. And the last stage was write case study, because it's just completely baked into the project. And it's like, wow, that's obvious, because the stuff that's baked into the project gets done and the other stuff does, So little things, it was just a column on a random wall that I happened to look at. Other times you go into these agencies and you're talking to people and you see like profound similarities to what we're dealing with here, profound differences to what we're dealing with here. And like, I don't know if we want to transition into where we're going and what we're doing as a business, but these trips to America have been a huge part of influencing that for us.
Yeah, I got that sense when things, I feel like in the last year in particular for you guys, things have changed, not too much as a business, but you've looked to make, major improvements. I think I was reading, I had a note here that in the last 12 months you picked up your first executive creative director. Mm-hmm. Glenn came on board from AJF. Mm-hmm. But also in the last few months you got a client services director, which I don't think you've had in the business in the past. What's going on? You're going from digital to creative. What's the difference?
Yeah, let's do that. So just a quick little clarification. So on the client services director, so we had one, and she's been with the business for 5 years now. We moved her into a GM role.
That's right.
Right. So she's her name's Izzy. She's brilliant, and she's a hustler like Juz, my business partner, and I are. So she came in as a project manager and has just spectacularly risen to the top. The client services director we've just hired is like a career client services senior person, and so she's coming in to add a level of sophistication that street fighters like us don't necessarily have. Because street fighting will only get you so far.
Yeah. Well, it's good though. It's good to see you bring in people. It's obvious to me that you notice when you need to bring in someone else that's better than you at a certain task. Yeah.
All the time. Yeah. So I mean, as far as what we're doing, by way of background, we're let's call it 15 years in. Mm-hmm. We started off trying to be I don't know, I guess you'd call it a design or a branding agency at the time. The business was called Hardhat Creative, and the line was building better brands. And we had these grand visions of going out and, working with the best brands in the world. And what my business partner and I found out very quickly was that nobody wanted branding advice from two 24-year-old guys with no experience. But they were very happy for us to do internet stuff because we were young and that looked like a thing we'd be able to do. So we really spent the first 12, 13 years building I guess what's now known as a digital agency. And over the decade and a bit, that meant different things. Like you had to be good at producing different things. So it started off with just making websites and doing email marketing campaigns. And then you had to be good at doing flash games. And then you had to be good at doing mobile apps. And you had to be good at doing web apps. And you had to be good at doing social and content. And it changed so much over that period. And it's crazy to think that we survived when not only did we not know anything, but pretty much every year we would have something on our profit and loss statement that was 50-60% of our revenue one year that was like less than 10% the next year. Really? Big ticket item. Like this year everybody wants to buy flash games. Next year nobody wants to buy flash games, everybody wants to buy mobile apps. This year everybody wants to buy mobile apps. Next year everybody wants to buy social media content. Like it's just mental, and it's all different people, different skill sets you need for these things. Anyway, we got to a point maybe 2 or 3 years ago where we're doing these trips to America and we're seeing that digital agency, in air quotes, just for people doing the audio, still absolutely exist in a really interesting way in markets like America. So we walk into a 120-person digital agency in America and you get a tour and it's like, okay, this is a team of 40 people and these guys are redesigning the e-commerce experience for Adidas. And then there's another 40 people over here and these guys are just working on the Starbucks loyalty app. And then you got another 20 people over here, they're working on some top secret Google project, and then there's another 20 random people doing something else. That work at that scale just doesn't happen in Australia. Adidas is not redesigning their e-commerce experience here. Starbucks is not building their app here. So where digital agencies in Australia seem to be evolving, what they seem to become when they grew up, was predominantly engineering houses, right? So very, very tech heavy, right? Become 80% software engineers, usually pick one of the big marketing technology platforms, whether that's Adobe or Sitecore or one of the other ones, and you end up with a massive kind of engineering core with this like thin veneer of design or creativity around it, and that's what the business becomes. And there's lots of examples in the local market of where that's happened, and a lot of the guys who've done that have had very successful exits. They've sold to big four consulting firms because consulting firms know that model. It's just you're a body shop and it's how many engineers can I place in your business for how long. And Giles and I looked at that, and as two non-technical guys, we just had to do technical stuff because that was the only way we could have credibility. We said, that's not our future. We don't want to be 80% engineers. Like, we absolutely believe technology is important. We always need to build stuff, but that it should not be the 80% of our business.
And how long ago did you both decide this?
So I'd say probably 2 years ago, it really sort of crystallized.
Yeah.
Because it's like, is it just us? Is it the industry? We don't know. And then we go over to America, you see the stuff happening there, and you're like, if we were going to still be a digital agency, that's what we would be. But that does not exist in Australia. Like, that work just isn't here.
Okay.
So then the task is, we'll write a different ending. What's it going to be? And the theory, or I guess the bet that we've made, the vision is to be Australia's next great creative agency. And the bet that we're making is that, when we look at the great creative agencies in this country that have come before us, they all come from a similar DNA, right? They're all very good at a similar thing. From an executional perspective, they're very good at making 30-second pieces of film that go on broadcast TV. And the bet that we're making is that the next wave of great creative agencies will not have that DNA. They will have DNA that is far more akin to the world that we've come from and to where we've grown up, and to, rather than have a TV DNA trying to attach digital and social to it, we think the next wave of great creative agencies are going to have a digital DNA and understand how to do the brand stuff as well.
Okay. And you think that DNA sort of aspect is being a digital creator first? Like, what is it that you think the crucial aspect is in comparison to, say, the old agency that was amazing at doing that 30-second film /ad?
Yeah. So I mean, they're really different jobs.
Yeah.
And what happens is just over time, individuals and organizations optimize to do a thing really well. So if I think about what a traditional agency is optimized to do really well, I guess you could classify it as reductive thinking. Like they're very, very good at taking big, complicated things and distilling it down to a line, a brand proposition, and then a way of communicating that on a billboard, on a 30-second TVC, whatever it is. When I think about what digital agencies have optimized for over time, it is often a lot more around additive thinking, right? And so instead of being brand-led, what does the brand want to do? What does the brand want to say? It is audience-led, like how is somebody going to interact with this? And rather than being reductive, like narrow it down and down and down, it's additive. It's like, where else can this go? How else can this live? How can people interact with this? And if I think about our journey for 12 or 13 years, like it's been like altitude training, right? So we didn't grow up in agencies with massive budgets making glorious TV commercials and announcing the budgets for those things diminish. We grew up working with the smallest budgets, with the toughest, most fickle audience, with the highest transparency over the results that we were, with the highest expectations from clients, So we'd get 1/10 of the budget of what the TV agency was getting, and 10 times the scrutiny because you could measure everything that we were doing. So we basically had to learn how to make sales overnight, and how to make brands over time. Like that's what we have had to evolve to do. And we've had to learn to do it with not very much oxygen. And so I think it's far easier to stretch out than to go from a very luxurious place of having millions of dollars to do beautiful things and then work out how to do stuff quickly.
Okay, this is starting to make it more... I can see the analogy now. Because it's sort of like how for years, if you were a creator on YouTube, a podcaster, anywhere on the internet, maybe it was Vine, Instagram, whatever, the bigger creators would it would take time until they were doing deals with your Pepsis, Coca-Colas, Apples of the world. And they were way more scrutinized, and the dollars were also way less still. I mean, I think the CPM on things like YouTube is still way lower than what it is on TV in general. And I'm pretty sure the deals for someone to do something for you on Instagram, say like a Kylie Jenner, is still way lower in comparison to what you would pay, like a movie celebrity in comparison. So I can see where you guys have gone from sort of that bedroom creator to now that really polished version of that creator, if you know what I mean, when they're starting to mature in what they're actually offering.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the path that we've been on. And we feel that the bits that we've mastered are the harder bits to master, right? Like to design complex interfaces and understand, like when you are making shit that does not have media money pointing towards it, like it actually just has to be good. Or people won't find it, they won't use it, they won't do anything with it. So when that is what you've been brought up doing, it is a far easier thing to do than when you have been brought up making things that someone's going to spend $10 million ensuring that everybody sees the thing that you made. You can wrap a turd in a big enough media budget and it's going to work. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So we said, look, this is not about, gutting the agency. This is about maintaining the agency that we have and adding another half to it, and recognizing that those reductive thinking skills and the ability to do beautiful brand storytelling and work on the promises side of the brand, like what do we promise you in an ad, not just the experiences side, is a thing that we just don't know how to do. And if we want to get to where we want to get to, we want to be solving bigger problems for bigger clients, we need to be able to do that. So this is where we've gone on this path of finding people like Glenn and like Sarah and like Lani who have come from that world, because I don't have another 15 years to learn this shit from scratch. We need people that have done it and done it at scale.
Yeah. And so do you think at the moment it's a multitude of, like I was thinking, is it more specific types of clients on retainer? Is it processes? Is it networks? Like what do you think is the crucial aspect when you're going for bringing in these people that you enjoy most about their skill set in particular?
So I think we're bringing in people that have a level of sophistication and a level of experience with stuff that we just have not done.
Yeah.
That is highly important to the client. And so whether that's structured as projects or structured as retainers, it's just being able to have the language and the experience to solve the important problems. And often when you're a digital agency, there is an inherent subservience in that, because there must be some other, if you're the digital agency, but who's the real agency? Like, who's doing the ideas for you guys to execute, you know? So it's good to be very good at executing, but you're often not solving the client's biggest problems.
Yeah.
And so bringing in people that are capable and experienced at doing that, and sort of giving them a rocket ship to attach onto to execute this stuff really well, is the play.
Why specifically creative agency and not this idea of full service agency, or are they one and the same thing?
Yeah, so I hope this is we're right down the rabbit hole of how agencies work. So I hope this is interesting for people. So
it's interesting for me.
Okay, well that's
I'm the number one fan of this show.
Download count is 1. So this is a part of the industry that seems to pendulum swing, where you have full service, again air quotes, full service agencies who basically do everything. And then it swings out to specialized agencies. And the first great separation was media and creative. So if we were to wind all the way back, everything was together, right? And basically what ad agencies did was they bought media for their clients. So a client came and said, I have, $1 million shillings or whatever it would have been back in the day. Can you buy TV, print, radio, whatever for me?
Yeah.
And kind of for free, they would then, so they'd get commission on that, and they would make the ads out of the commissions that they got for buying the media.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, they'd be buying ad placement somewhere, whether it's TV and newspaper, whatever. Yeah,
exactly. Okay. And doing the creative for free.
Yeah.
And then what happened is somewhere along the way, those things split, and you had separate media agencies and separate creative agencies. So the media agencies just do the buying. They work out who do you want to talk to based on your objectives, right? It's a new product launch where we think we need to talk to people on average 7 times for them to know what the product is, and and they will buy based on that. And then so they're buying the spots, and then you have a separate to that media creative agency that is making the stuff that goes in the spots. What's happened over the last decade, especially as all of this technological change has happened, is that creative agency function has splintered lots and lots of different ways.
Yeah.
So then you have a creative agency who makes your TV ads, and then you have a social and content agency who does something else. Then you have a mobile agency that looks after your app, and then you have all of these different agencies, which at some point were probably all adding a lot of value because they were dealing with very specialized areas. And I think where we are seeing the trend go now is things are coming back together. And I think one of the reasons for that is because clients don't want to spend their life managing 15 different agencies. And at least if everything is together or consolidated, you're spending less time managing the work, more time doing the work. And to be honest, for a client to say, look, I'd rather just get fucked by one agency than worrying about how 15, even if you don't really know how to do it all,
but
you say you can do it all, I'm kind of better with that than worrying about how 15 different agencies are trying to fuck me on different things that I don't really understand.
Well, it sounds like their time is so, in this modern era, time is so valuable that it's just to go through and analyze every single contract and every single agency and this specific thing, it's just easier to go with one.
Yeah, and in addition to managing them all individually, you're kind of hoping that they all play nicely together, and you hope that what you're doing online matches offline. And so I see why clients want to simplify that. And the other thing is, spotlight effect, we think we are the most important thing in our clients' lives, but the reality is we're 5%, 10%. And most of the time, so do they really want to spend that 10% split between 12 different agencies, or do they just want to get it down to 1 or 2?
Yeah.
So there is a big swing back to full service, and we're seeing creative agencies bring media back in-house. It's not the next thing that we're going to do, but I would not say never. I think it's if it helps us produce better work, it's absolutely something that we'd look at.
Do you do much, I guess, for campaigns? Are you doing much, you're a digital agency, so I'd expect that you'd be familiar with...
You were a creative agency, come on.
Were?
I'm clearly not pitching it right.
But your background in that area would have meant that obviously you've played around with a few campaigns with SEO, social and whatnot. Is this still part of being a creative agency, or do you think that that's something you start doing less of and pushing more to that area of media buying as everything becomes digital anyway?
Yeah, so the reason we got involved, not necessarily with media buying, but at least with media recommending. So we would often, part of what we'd be doing is, here's the campaign, here's the content plan, and here's the media recommendation, even if we weren't the ones buying it, is because if the media recommendation wasn't good, the work would not get seen. And oftentimes we are or were dealing with media agencies that just sucked at this world. Like, they could negotiate you a great deal with Channel 9, but this digital stuff, a lot of them still haven't worked out how to make money on it. So they're just, because it's hard, because you're not dealing with $squillion contracts. It's bits. It's the old world is like, you do a big contract at the start of the year and then you're kind of done. And this is like, no, there's 0 days off. Like, I want my shit optimized every day. I want, 15 different assets in market. I want retargeting strategy. So often we're working with media agencies that didn't know how to do it very well. And hopefully, what we're starting to see is media agencies are getting better at it. And so we get to worry less about that and just trust that they're doing their job. But, it's still a thing that we keep an eye on.
On the point of creative, which I guess covers the topics I want to speak about on content, we spoke last time about the fact that everything has been pushed to the fringes of content. It's either really short video-based work or it's very long-form work, whether it's documentaries, audio, whatever that may be. I've been playing around with TikTok lately.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
How's the 6-second film festival coming along?
Oh, yeah, I was going to tell you not to ask about that. I'd actually completely forgotten about it until I saw the little heads up email about what we might talk about today.
Okay.
It is so funny how these things are such hot topics. It is like literally what everyone's talking about for a moment in time. And then it's like, oh, now that you mentioned it, no one's really, like, it's just become air now. It's like, yeah, obviously you're making 6-second stuff, because what else would you be doing?
Yeah.
And I did not appreciate how quickly that happens until I see a thing from you, and it's like, really, I was talking about that? That's kind of embarrassing.
I know. And the thing with short form, I guess, video in particular is, like, and I've noticed this with TikTok in particular, is it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter.
TikTok is, it's kind of mental, isn't it? Like, when I look at it, the analogy that I think about is how people talk about weed now versus in the 70s and THC content. And it's like, oh, you guys were all smoking, like, you were hippies back in the 70s. And like, yeah, but it wasn't the same as now. And it's like, we found the part of weed that does the bit that we like, and we've just evolved it to just get a higher and higher concentration of that. And then I look at early social media, right? And it's like, oh, there's pictures and there's words and, oh, there's some video. Oh, the video seems to be working pretty well. What if we make the video bigger? What if we add hashtags? What if we make the videos autoplay? And you've just kind of have this mutated platform where if you look at TikTok, it is all video, all short, all like user generated. It's they found the bit that was most addictive, and made that 90% of the interface, and you lose like a lot of life. Like, you open it up and it's like, holy shit, is it still Wednesday?
Hey, you can get sucked in massively, and that's because a lot of with TikTok is it's really easy to get discovered. Like, that sort of gamification, the notification element, I would say is a lot more. Like, it's like being injected into your eyeballs.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We've been, like I said, Lauren and I have been playing around with, I think it's probably the one platform that could supersede Instagram. I feel like Instagram is quite mature now in its life cycle, just because so many brands are on it now.
Yeah.
I wonder, I don't know if you've played around with it, but whether you think, or when you think brands would start looking at something like a TikTok.
Yeah, it started, like, I've started seeing things on there. And one of the interesting ironies, I think, is as the new platforms come, they become increasingly hostile environments for brands, and it takes brands longer and longer to work out what to do with them. So this was a thing on Instagram, like, that was a hard thing for brands to work out how to get involved with. It was a thing for Snapchat, it's like, God, how do brands play here? And it's a thing for TikTok. Then the thing with Instagram and Snapchat is, raising funds becomes a big issue for them, and so they have to give advertisers ways of getting in. And I wonder, with TikTok, it's also the first big social network out of China, like, how
does that work?
How important, like, they just fund it forever and just enjoy the data, or what's going to happen? And
it's a real tricky one as well, because Musical.ly was acquired, right?
Yeah.
By
Yep.
ByteDance. And so then they re-released it as TikTok, which was TikTok everywhere else in the world. And then I think it kicking off in the US is what's made it big, particularly in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like, I've actually emailed their advertising team a few times now. Still yet to get an answer.
They don't want your money.
No, they well, you can't. There's only very specific brand partners that can advertise, and the ads are very specific. Like, they don't have a self-service ad platform yet.
But this is quite typical. Like, this happened with Facebook and Insta and Snapchat. Like, first ads on Snapchat was like, if you have less than $100,000, like, just don't call.
No,
like, we don't want to know. And then over time, they all end up being self-serve. And if you got 15 cents and a bag of chips, you can buy something. We'll take it.
But that's what interests me. I mean, is particularly like LinkedIn and TikTok at the moment are the ones that interest me the most, because just reviewing that time when Facebook just came along and Instagram, it's the best days to get organic reach is when the ad platforms are basically non-existent.
Yep.
And then when the ad platforms come along, that's when you can start turning to other people and say, hey, I've sort of mastered this platform. I could help you run ads, creative, whatever, on this specific platform.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. There's always the excitement of, potentially blowing up, doing well on XYZ platform when they're new.
Yeah, agree. But I think that some of that is, at least in the corporate world, a little bit tempered by, we got excited on Facebook, we did that, and then we got excited on Instagram, and we remember we had that Twitter account, and so I think compared to 7, 8, 9 years ago, brands are rightfully a bit slower to just dive in, and like extreme youth brands, it makes sense. Like, kids are there, who cares? Let's just get in and do something.
Yeah.
But for your mainstream brands, I think it's all that FOMO's kind of gone.
Yeah.
No one's talking about what's your corporate TikTok strategy yet. And we're probably better for it.
So you think brands have become now that social media is sort of past about a decade of existence, you think that when you speak to brands now that they're a bit more skeptical and B, more likely just to look for your advice as to the wider strategy of what to do?
I think it's just approached a lot more level-headed than it used to be. It used to be the shiny new thing and the frenzy and let's just do it. And look, I think a lot of decisions get made in the world based on the stories we can tell our bosses. So when it was great to tell your boss, absolutely, we are all over this social media thing. We've got an agency pumping out content for us. Our engagement's going great. Like, when that was a great thing to tell your boss, then there was a lot of that work.
Yeah.
Whether it was actually good for the brand or not. And now that that's not really a great thing to tell your boss, there is less of that work.
What do you think is the great thing to tell your boss now? Is how much ROI you're getting out of something?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the I wouldn't say confidence is on the way down, but things feel different to 12 months ago. I think everybody's a little bit
tighter economy.
Yeah, people are just seem a little bit more scared.
Yeah.
And a little bit more hesitant to do things than they were even 12 months ago. And so
I'd agree.
Things that were maybe frivolous, and let's just have a crack, there's a lot less of that around.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're doing sort of specialist content, and when we speak to brands or people, there's just way more skepticism, I feel. You can sort of feel it in the air where the economy's at, which is always interesting, because sometimes it also gives you opportunity to play around with things a little bit more.
Absolutely. So the conditions are always perfect, right? As long as they're the same for everybody, everybody's dealing with where the economy's at, conditions are always perfect. You just got to know how to play them.
Last time we caught up as well, we spoke about how your process with clients is quite iterative. I'm curious as to what that actually looks like. You spoke about that sort of, that production in that agency, and at the very end they've got their case study and they're sort of mapping their jobs on this, maybe was it a board or a table or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's this big sort of onboarding process we do with clients, which ends with like hundreds of cards on a wall, and each card is a discrete piece of work, and the clients are kind of building the scope side by side with us as we go.
Yeah.
Because there's always more things that you could do than you have money for. So part of what we like to do in an onboarding process is to surface what all those things are and then help the client navigate what the implications of adding things in and taking things out are.
Okay.
We still do a lot of that, but to be honest, as the work's changing. We're doing like big brand work now, and we're making TVCs and we're doing different stuff. One of the things that we are working out how to evolve is a process that we're very good at for big digital projects, and working out which are the bits of that we keep and which are the bits that we jettison as we move into new old work.
And do you find that you guys are working more on do you typically work on a sprint sort of methodology, or is there something else entirely?
So when you say sprint, I mean in like 2-week bursts, which is like what's sort of typical for agile.
I don't know. I guess what I was thinking about is when you spoke about this stuff last time, at clients, you spoke about before, you have different sticky notes up on a board, maybe in a client meeting, and then does that get broken down into little different campaigns or separate briefs that you hit the client up with and they decide on what they want? Or are you just sort of, if you've got them in there on a retainer or as an account, are you just testing everything out and then reporting back on what actually works in sort of 2-week cycles or something?
Yes. So, it depends on the client and it depends on the engagement that we've got with the client.
Yeah.
Certainly where we're trying to move the agency is to deeper, longer term relationships with clients. It lets us work on more important work and achieve better things for them. There seems to generally be a higher interest in test and learn than a disproportionate interest in that versus what actually gets done.
Yeah.
Often, if you're working with an insurance company, right, and you want to do test and learn, and you go, well, no worries, we're going to test these 7 different messages and see what works best. And they go, okay, well, that means all 7 need to get through legal, through regulatory, it's like, oh God, this is just not happening. Let's just test it in the room. Which one do you guys like? Okay, that's the one we're going with,
Yeah.
And that could be a bank, that could be an insurance company, that could be like any big risk-averse company that is just marketing might want to do test and learn, but the computer says no.
Yeah. I know that all too well. We had a podcast we were doing for a client, pardon me, and God, there was this one episode and I was like, what's wrong with this? Like, there's nothing wrong, but the compliance team had to listen to the entire thing.
Yeah.
And they got so picky about certain words. I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
mate, this is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's the fun in the games of different clients in different areas.
Yeah.
The
the compliance guys aren't there to get your podcast out. The compliance guys are there to make sure nothing gets fucked up.
Exactly.
So it's,
and that you don't shoot them in the foot.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of podcasts,
Yep.
you just pushed out another one today.
Yes.
I think by the time this goes live, it'll be about 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep.
So it'll be
probably still be the newest one, let's be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah.
What's going on? I know you're applying a bit of the scarcity principle there.
As in, why aren't we doing more of them?
I say this every time I see you. I'd love to see more, but I understand that you've got 1,000,001 other things going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to do more of them as well. Like I love it, and it's really quite a self-indulgent thing. Like, so to produce an episode, there's just 3 of us making it happen. There's myself, there's Dr. Mel, and there's Cops, our production guy, and everyone's pretty busy. And I'm really the main guy saying, hey, we haven't done one for a while. Let's find a date. Let's get together. Let's make this work. And so if I have 2 busy weeks and I just kind of forget about it, and then it's 2 weeks before we can book it in, and it stretches. I feel like I'm late with my homework. I'm sorry.
Should I send you like a reminder email every 2 weeks?
If you could just book the things into my calendar, that would be. I'm like a lemming. I just do what my calendar says, and if I don't remember to put a recording session in the calendar, it just kind of doesn't happen.
No worries. Yeah, I should actually start sending.
Just send me invites.
At some point when we get we're probably going to move into a proper office early next year. I think by then we'll have a studio at an office location.
Whoa.
So I think at that point, maybe we've got an excuse and we can just say to you guys, hey, the studio's ready.
Yeah.
You can just rock up.
Yeah, we've got you booked in every Tuesday at 9, so just get here.
Just come along.
Yeah.
No, I say that because I just genuinely enjoy it. I was curious as to what is the feedback like from clients? Like, do you get regularly hit up when you put out a new episode at all?
Yeah, it's kind of weird because you just, as I'm sure you know, you produce an episode, you kind of push it out, and it's in the world, and you just kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
And then, I was up in Sydney catching up with a client 2 weeks ago, And he's just like, mate, where's the next episode? And you just kind of forget that people listen to these things.
Yeah.
And it goes, all those little download numbers are actually real people, well, at least for the most part, I think real people who listen to it. And what has been really interesting is no one's called and said, hey, heard the podcast, got $1 million, can you do something cool for me? But when we're pitching, like I've had a few instances where I've walked into the room and someone in the room who I'm pitching to says, oh, I know the podcast, I love the podcast. And it's just...
It's the greatest network. It's the only way to scale networking.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's like kind of this little... They say with advertising, like ads with fame baked in from the start perform better. Like if you design an ad to try and make it famous, it is going to do better than an ad that you don't design to try and make it famous.
Yeah.
And having a tiny little sliver of fame, in a tiny little corner of the marketing world in Australia, that to walk into a room and some person in there has listened to 15 hours of me speaking, it feels pretty great, and it's a pretty amazing competitive advantage.
It is. And I mean, I was thinking recently about because we got this interview lined up with Gary Vaynerchuk, and we're pretty stoked to get him in. I was at that time when I was doing my research, like, what has really made Gary? Like, how the hell did he create an agency that's now 600 staff? It's a global firm. There's the obvious thing, like he got the money from his investments in the Ubers and Facebooks of the world. Like he bought some Facebook shares off Mark's parents. That's how early he got in. So there's that obvious thing. Okay, so he's a bit cashed up. He's got some money behind him, his own money. But you've got to think like him as a marketing influencer, someone who understands how to market and talk about it in particular and bring value to people. It has to have been like the biggest element of him securing the clients that he did.
Yeah.
Particularly in those first years.
Yeah, I mean, people love to be associated with fame, and I look like in the local market, guys like Russell Howcroft and Adam Ferrier and Todd Sampson, who he's not in the industry anymore, but guys who have become famous ad guys, like they are just new business machines. Like show me a CMO in the country that doesn't want to just see what Adam Ferrier thinks about whatever problem they're looking at.
Yeah,
and he's a brilliant, intelligent guy, but a lot more people know about that because he's had spots on the gruen, and so I think you can't underestimate once the fame machine starts cranking. It's pretty powerful.
Now, speaking of the fame machine, I got this question from this guest, right? And I think you might have seen it on the notes, and I was like, what's this? Why is this guy answering this question? I was like, holy shit, like he's actually properly listened to both of your earlier interviews. So he's a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk. And the question was, Gary V feels sneakerheads are going to be part of the resurgence of sports cards. Now, I don't know if you collected sports cards.
Oh, so sports cards, not sports cars. I'm like, how many do I need to have for it to be a collection? Because I currently have 0.
Greater than 1, I'd say. But sports cards, and I was listening to him speak at an event recently where they're talking about how sneakerheads, because there's such a scarcity of sneakers, they're finding other things to invest in, and that next thing has become sports cards. And I guess you're a bit of a sneakerhead. Would that ever interest you at all?
I mean, I certainly was a card collector as a kid, so there's a tick for nostalgia. But I mean, I probably would take issue with a couple of those points. So with the scarcity, I think that's incorrect. Like I think there is deliberate scarcity of particular models, which is why you have people queued up around the block for launch days. But if you look at the number of hot sneakers released in a given week now compared to 10 years ago, like every brand is doing this, and it's not just sneaker brands. But
there's also more people doing it.
This is true, but I mean, every luxury brand is doing this as well. And like when you can buy high-end Nikes for $1,500 and high-end Balenciagas for $1,500, like it's all blurred, it's all mixed up. So I think if you are a sneaker connoisseur, you have more choice and more access than ever before.
Okay.
I also think like there's a real functional thing that sneakers do and so when we talk about sneakerheads, I'm not talking about people that buy them and box them and never wear them, right? Because maybe those guys are into cards and vinyl and whatever else. I'm talking about people that actually wear what they own.
Yeah.
Like you get that as a mode of self-expression. Right. So for me, that's really the only thing I change every day. I'm usually in like all black or blue and grey. The thing that changes based on what meetings I have and whether it's raining or not raining is the sneakers.
Yeah.
And cards, like you're not going to be a grown man walking around with your folder full of basketball cards turning up to meetings. Like, before we start, if you guys want to have a look, I have this Shaq rookie card. It's,
Yeah, so you've got to be like you think it's a certain type of person who's a real collector already.
Yeah, and
or trader.
Yeah, there are those guys. There used to be our head of tech. He was just a hardwired collector, like obsessive collector, and like so his thing was vinyl, Czech, heavy metal, right?
Okay.
Doesn't speak Czech, like not even
vinyl,
a huge
Czech, heavy metal.
So he has like the biggest private collection in the world of Czech heavy metal on vinyl.
Wow.
Right. And so he's just a fiend for it. And so, for him, it could have been Czech heavy metal. It could have been model train sets. It could have been sneakers. It could have been cards, because most of that's staying locked up in your house all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas if you want to interview him, I'll do an intro. But the thing, sneakers have a function, a functional part of them. And I think when you're a grown man, and because it is typically men in society, in the corporate world, you don't get a lot of ways to flex and you don't get a lot of ways to show personality, and sneakers have become a socially acceptable way to do that, which cards can't do.
Have you noticed how, like when you first started in the ad agency world, just visiting different brands, how much people have become casual in the workplace? Like I've just noticed that in particular, like I can only, because I'm in the finance world, but even in the finance world, I find it rare to see people wearing ties nowadays.
Yeah.
Exceptionally rare.
It is weird. And you're right. Like, I don't think I've noticed it, but then I think about how I feel when I walk into a room and someone's wearing a suit and tie, and I'm like, shit, where's the funeral? Like, what's going on here? Yes, I would agree.
Yeah. But it's funny just that on the point of sneakers. I found all that fascinating. I got into something like called StockX, and they list like sneakers, and they've just started getting into cards. Personally, for me, so Lauren and I have been trying to figure out like a hobby that we can find, and our thing at the moment is flipping stuff.
Okay.
Because it's just a bit of fun. You get to go to like an antique store. We're moving. We're out there.
So Gary V. You're at the yard sales. Are you thrifting?
No, not the yard sale. Just we like going to like bigger op shops like your Chapel Street Bazaars of the world. Because I was trying to come up with a hobby, and the only alternative is to go hiking, bow hunting or something like that, which is more on your Joe Rogans.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't have time or money for that. And a lot of that stuff costs so much money to do, whereas flipping is free.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of fun.
It's funny, you just reminded me, so my wife and I, a long time ago before we were married, I remember we went on like an excursion. We lived like southeast. We went west side. We went over to Williamstown, and we found some little like op shop there. And we found there's records in there. And we're digging through these records. It's like, oh my God, this like the original Rocky soundtrack. And there was like a few other records of things that we'd heard of. Like, shit, these must be like, we've just found gold. Like, this is unbelievable. So we bought all of these records, and then we scurry back over to, our side. And I remember going to it doesn't exist anymore, but there's this record store on Carlisle Street down in Eastern Kilda.
Okay.
And going in there, and I pull these out of my bag, and I'm like, I feel like I got gold here. I'm pulling this stuff out, and I dropped them. I put them on the bench. I'm like, what do you reckon? And he's like, nah, I don't want any of them. I was like, what? Do you know what we have? Like, we clearly, like, there's no value in any of them.
Nothing.
Yeah, we knew nothing.
Was this like a smartphone era when you found these?
Nah. Otherwise, we would have just looked them up on the spot. So this is like 15 years ago.
Wow.
We thought, shit, we found a hack, but we had been hacked.
How long ago did you and your wife start dating?
2001.
Wow.
Yeah.
18 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow, son.
It's like almost half my life. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, Lauren and I have been together for 12 years. About 12 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. What have you learned from her?
I was going to say, we're married for 10 in October. 2 beautiful kids.
Yeah.
What have I learned from her?
Yeah.
Wow, a lot. She, She is like everything that I'm not. She's like organized and proficient and like very, very diligent at like all of her pursuits.
That's good. Well, it's good to have that opposing personality style.
Yeah.
I find.
Yeah. I never considered myself disorganized until she actually said to me the other day, she's like, because we've got my son, we go to parent-teacher night. He's only 6. And the teachers were basically saying, look, these are his list of deficiencies, right? Like he's disorganized, he doesn't concentrate, he doesn't want to do things he's not interested in. And my wife's like, I hear what you're saying, but also he's his father's son. And I was like, what the fuck? What, you just dropped all that on me? She's like, well, it's true. And so, yeah, it is good to have somebody to be good at all the things that I'm not good at. And yeah, I didn't consider myself disorganized, but apparently, according to her, I am.
How did the two of you actually meet?
So we were both on a program from uni. So we're both Jewish.
Okay.
We were on this thing called LDP, which is a leadership development program. So where they pick sort of 20, every year they pick 20 future leaders of the community.
Okay.
And we went on this crazy tour to Belarus and to Poland,
Really?
and to England and to Israel. Yeah.
Shit.
So they sort of take you to somewhere where there was a Jewish community and there kind of isn't anymore.
Yeah.
And so that was Belarus and Poland. And then, they take you to somewhere where it's thriving. So we went to, in England at the time, there was this like world meetup for the union, like World Union of Jewish Students. And then you sort of finish in Israel and look at the strength of the people now.
Yeah. And you sort of hitched it off from there. That's super fascinating that you went to those areas, because I've become really fascinated with, unfortunately, what happened during the Holocaust in those areas. And you would have learned about it a lot, because Lauren's, I'll have to show you the map when we get downstairs, but Lauren's grandfather was in the Polish army.
Yeah, wow.
And he was in the resistance as well.
Yeah.
He spoke 7 languages. He operated as an intelligence officer through Eastern Europe.
Wow. That generation. I mean, my
just
grandfather,
insane.
similar story. And you just look at us and it's like, I speak English.
Yeah.
I've lived in Australia my whole life. You know?
I've got a pretty cushy life.
Yeah.
Like, you got to think about how, there's that movie about those twins in Belarus and how they built that Jewish community in the forest.
Yeah.
And just, all the things about the Einsatzgruppen and like what happened there it's insane. I'm guessing you would have learned all about that, right?
Yeah, it's a lot, like 18 years ago now. So learned and mainly forgotten. But I do remember like how, I mean, firstly, Belarus is just like, it's a weird place.
It's like
it's
the
full
wild
Soviet, and it's
Yeah.
weird. And I remember like we did part of the program. We had one dinner with like a local family, and they're telling you like, oh, we have 0% unemployment. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. And it's like, yeah, because if you're unemployed, you're considered an invalid. So you're not counted in the survey.
Wow.
So 100% of employed people are employed. It's, and I do remember like there's a weird, when you're walking around and like you're on a guided tour and they're telling you, 65 years ago or 70 years ago, there was this huge Jewish community here, and 20,000 were killed in one day in this side, and 40,000 were killed.
Nuts.
And you're looking, and there's old people there, and you're looking at these 80-year-old people, and you can't help but think, where were you?
Yeah. What were you doing?
What were you doing?
Yeah.
How are you still here?
And that's what's in that documentary, in the Einsatzgruppen thing. What's really interesting about that documentary is how the Nazis managed to convince ordinary police officers to do the things that they did, and how a lot of those officers were basically ideologues selected from certain areas of study at university. Like, none of them were soldiers at all.
Wow.
So they managed to indoctrinate groups of people to go commit like all these acts, where they kill 20,000 people in the forest in Belarus, and they'd get all the locals in on it. And it's just such a fascinating documentary, because they interview people from Belarus who are still alive. And this one lady, she like lived in the forest in this cabin, and she was talking about how awful it was, and how like her brother was beaten because he tried to stop them doing something, like, because they were this family that lived not far from where they were executing people. And she said it was awful, like you could hear screams all day long. It's just, it's pretty shocking stuff, but it is a very valuable lesson for people to learn, I think. But I've become fascinated with that area because Lauren's family's from that area. They all immigrated after the war because they were just done with what happened.
Yeah.
I've become obsessed with this YouTube channel called Bold and Bankrupt.
Wow.
And it's a guy.
I feel like I could feature. That's like two of my best attributes.
He's actually a really well-spoken English guy who is just fascinated with areas like Belarus and does not walking tours, but just goes and tours the country. And I love it. Absolutely love it.
We should shout out anyone in Minsk listening to us,
Give us a shout out.
Give us a shout out.
I'm sure we're like number 400 in Belarus on the charts or something like that.
Yeah. Well, how did we get here?
I don't know.
Wow.
I really don't know.
What happened?
I'm looking back at my notes and like, Belarus?
Yeah, what's the segue back to sneakers or behavioural economics? Or I don't even think I answered your South by question at the start, but here we are.
Potentially. Before we get into the rapid fire stuff, I've got to ask you about, I guess, what you've learned from doing these cognitive bias things. I think last time we spoke, you said it's almost impossible to apply a lot of this stuff regularly unless you're consciously thinking about it. And then if you've got a list of like 90 cognitive biases, good luck.
Yeah.
And I know this because I just read Rolf DeBelly's book about the art of thinking clearly. And basically what he says is if it's a short-term, task that has no real repercussions, just go with your intuition. Like if you want to have Pepsi or Coke, then just go with whatever. But if it's longer-term, major decisions about your personal or business life, that you should have some sort of a checklist to deciding on how to approach this problem.
Yeah,
so I guess I was curious.
Good advice.
Pardon? Yeah,
sounds like good advice.
Sounded like good advice. I guess I was curious, have you and Mel ever spoken about this, or have you got your own checklist that you sort of look to when you make decisions on things?
Oh, my aspirational self absolutely does. I'm sure my wife has many checklists. It's funny because a lot of the time, at the end of every episode, so we'll do a bias. The little wrap up at the end is me talking about, okay, so if you're a marketer, here's how to use this, here's what to do with it. And Mel's wrap up is, if you're a person, here's how to kind of not get screwed by this.
Okay.
And usually her advice is slow down.
Yeah.
Right?
Very easy to do when you're a psychologist and not disorganized down.
Yes. So, and I mean, this all sort of comes back to, one of the sort of seminal pieces on this is the Danny Kahneman Thinking Fast and Slow.
Yep.
System 1, System 2 thinking. So System 1, quick, automatic, intuition, not even really conscious what you're doing. System 2, so System 1 is like 5 plus 5, and you just know it's 10, right? Whereas System 2 is like, if I said to you 25 times 6, like you'll get there, but you need to actually engage different parts of your brain, and you slow down.
Yeah.
So really this question is about when do you engage System 1 and when do you engage System 2? And it's like when it's not going to have a big repercussion.
Yeah.
Just System 1's very efficient, and if we moved everything into System 2, we would be very slow, and I'd probably still be trying to work out which sneakers to wear today.
It's a good point. I remember for years I would engage as a very conscientious person. I wonder if your wife does this. I would engage System 2 way too much.
Well, it can be paralyzing.
Yeah,
really.
It can be a double-edged sword.
Yeah. And it's true. So like when we're going on holidays and she's trying to decide which hotel or which Airbnb we're going to stay in, I'm like, yeah, let's just go with that one, and we'll pick it. And then 3 weeks later, she'll be showing me other options, and it's like, but we already picked. What are you doing? It's like, I know, but I just want to be sure.
And this is I literally had this problem recently, and so I decided it was booking a car for when we were in Japan in October, and then I had to find like all these 3 different platforms, like Kayak and this and that, and find out the price of getting a car in this certain city in rural Japan. And at the end of the day, I just thought, fuck it, like I'll just go direct to them, and whatever the closest place is to the train station, I'll just hire that.
Yeah.
It's just not even, like I could go spend my time on getting more clients or doing more work.
Exactly.
As opposed to this.
Yeah, totally.
So
one funny little self-observation I had around the System 1, System 2 stuff is usually when it's, if you'll indulge me.
Yeah.
A lot of the time when System 1, System 2 gets described, we talk about System 2 is a new skill, all right? So you learn to drive, and it becomes a very, very conscious, everything's very conscious. Like you're sitting at the wheel, I don't know if you remember being 16 or 17 with your learners, or when you just get your Ps, you are literally thinking about everything, and you're doing your head checks, and then somewhere along the way, System 2 becomes System 1, right? And you're just driving and having a conversation and not even conscious of what you're doing. And what I find really interesting is you can actually hack System 1 stuff back into System 2. So I had this thing where I realized when I was a bit anxious, I was checking social media on my phone a lot. and it was like on autopilot.
Yeah.
Like I just looked down and it's like, holy shit, my phone's in my hand and Instagram's open. Why? What is going on?
Yeah.
So what I did was I just like made some random folders on my phone and dropped the apps into different folders.
Okay.
Right. So opening social media had become system 1.
Yeah.
So I made some random apps, I made random folders, dropped them in. And the second it took me to remember, hang on, where did I put LinkedIn versus Instagram versus whatever else I want to open, was just long enough for me to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you here? What is going on?
That's such a good
Put the
point.
phone down.
That's such a good point because I just installed, it's like a blocker.
Yeah.
It's got a little blue sort of spaceship and you click it on Chrome. It's like a Chrome extension.
Yeah.
And for a brief second, it shows you a quote about XYZ website that you've put under this list.
Yeah.
And it stops you from, like, my thing on my laptop has been going on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
And sometimes I could just default do it and it will come up. It's like, you better be doing some research for a guest or you better be doing some research for a client. And so I just, for that split second, I go, oh, fuck, I'm not allowed to be doing this. And I exit out of it. Yeah. Which is brilliant.
So what I would love, I don't know if it exists, but I would love an app that you could put on your phone that you're like, just scramble these 7 apps.
Yeah.
Like scramble the home screen location of these 7 apps, because I'm a reasonably well-disciplined person, and usually for me that 1 second is enough to be like, oh yeah, you don't actually want to do this.
Well, it's funny you mention that because I had a timer on Instagram, but it's now part of System 1 where I just click ignore limit.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you hit the remind me in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Because that's now System 1. It's just automatic. What they need to do is move that button around or make it look different or make it say something different so it slips back into System 2 and you actually think about what you're doing.
100%. It's a really fucking good idea. Someone should go build that shit.
Please do it.
All right. Rapid fire questions to finish us off.
I didn't prep. Just easy ones.
What's in the fridge at home? Typically.
Well, you know what? It's a weird thing happens when you have kids. All of a sudden, you have lots of dairy in your house.
Really?
So my wife's away. I haven't done much shopping, but there is cheese, there is butter, there is milk, and some fruit and veg, not much else.
Do you guys cook like a lot of Israeli food at home? Like we cook a lot of Mediterranean stuff. I reckon we go through about 2-3 liters of olive oil.
We order a lot of Israeli food. Yes,
yeah.
Is that what you asked?
Well, it's interesting to see, like, in different families with specific backgrounds, they may have that sort of stuff. But like a lot of my Aussie mates that I grew up with, and so my dad's Greek, but my mum's like 5th generation Australian.
Yeah.
And so the cooking is always distinctly different in different families.
I mean, there is always hummus in the fridge. Is that weird? Or does everybody have that?
No, that's kind of normal. What's your go-to hummus?
Akhla.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been getting into the real,
you're like into
fancy
hipster hummus, aren't you?
Pill pal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's good.
You know why?
Yeah.
Because it's got olive oil in it.
There you go.
I have like this hereditary... I had this hereditary high cholesterol thing that I picked up from my mum, but it went away when I started eating Mediterranean again. So I had to get rid of things like not sunflower oils, but like I noticed a lot of hummus had vegetable oil in it.
Hey, where do you say your dad's from?
My dad's from Cyprus.
Isn't that interesting that you had a hereditary condition from your mum that was solved by adopting a diet from your dad?
Yeah.
It's like yin and yang. Perfect.
I think...
lucky they found each other.
I think what the GP said to me is, like, you've just picked up some of this from your mum and some of this from your dad.
So blame them both equally.
Yeah. But it was obvious because at that time I'd had like really bad anxiety to do with food.
Yeah.
Because I'd picked up IBS, and so I'd cut out a whole bunch of things, and yeah, it just made everything terrible. It just became really bad for my health. But it's good now.
Mediterranean
very
diet.
good. Mediterranean diet's the shit, man. And it's always interesting when you're from Cyprus because you grew up with sort of Greeks, Turks, Armenians, Israelis, and a few Lebanese.
Yeah.
Everyone seems to claim XYZ dish as their own.
Yeah, of course.
And adds a little thing.
Yeah.
There's like this one dish in Cyprus called avgolemno. It's mainly a Greek soup, supposedly.
Right.
But everyone's got their own variation, and all it is like a topping of like whether it's cumin or paprika or something like that. But everyone's got their own name, and they believe they created it.
Yeah.
Do you think dolmadis, the vine leaves with rice? Do you think they're Israeli, Turkish, or Greek?
Oh, God. I know they're not Israeli. So I would go... God, it's a touchy subject, what the Greek and the Turks claim. I'm going to say Greek, but...
Yeah.
Yeah. maybe?
I didn't actually know, but
you don't know?
I don't know, but
This is
so many
stitch-up.
Turkish friends have told me that it's theirs, and I've done a bit of research, and I'm not actually sure anymore.
Well, whoever did it, thank you. They're great.
It's brilliant food.
Well done.
What's on your playlist at the moment?
So I listen to like 50s and 60s soul, like with kids. I have kids in the car.
Really?
So I love that sort of stuff. But when it's just me, it's all podcasts. And I've just like music for me is a thing I'm just gonna have to get back to a bit later in life when I have more time.
Okay.
So Uncommon is the answer.
Last question for you. Is there a movie or documentary that you've watched of late that you'd recommend to the audience?
Oh, I'm so bad at this. I like literally watch nothing. I watched Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs with my son. That was fun.
What do you think of watching those kids' movies? Do you find them quite funny?
They are quite good. They do such an incredible job of having something for the grown-ups as well.
Yeah. The recent one that Lauren and I actively went to see was The Secret Life of Pets too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's a good film.
The sequel. Yeah, but I also think what's beautiful like about a film like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is it just indulges such a kid's fantasy. Like the idea that you could make a machine that makes different food rain. Like it's just pure joy for a child. And when you're watching it, you can't help but think, yeah, maybe I would make burgers rain as well.
It's funny as well because a lot of the Pixar films are just like, what if X could speak? What if Y could speak?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Actually, we saw Toy Story.
Oh yeah, what happened to like Toy Story 12 or something? Or 4? Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
Woody's still going?
He's still going.
He's old. Do they age?
I feel like he's leaving the sort of. I feel like I don't know. I missed one of them in between. But I just went for the nostalgia. You know. Look, Dan, we've just jumped over an hour. I've got to get you out of here.
Wow, sorry about that, everyone.
It's good to have you in here with the cameras. Now people can see your beautiful face.
Yeah, I said to you, like, podcasting used to be a domain for people with a face for radio, and now you got cameras in here, you have influencers in here, you have, like...
It's all about video now.
Reality stars, man.
Didn't you see the meme on our Instagram? It was audio, then video, then uncommon, and we were just sort of...
Well, all you beautiful people, get off my podcast. This is our place. You guys can stick to your visual mediums.
Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Google's a great place to start. LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, usually at Dan Monheit or some variation of that.
Beautiful. Dan, thanks for coming in, mate.
Cool. Thanks for having me back. Always fun.
Cheers. Thank you for making it to the end. Before you run off, subscribe if you enjoyed this episode or do leave us a rating. For Instagram, go follow us on @uncommon_podcast. For YouTube, search Uncommon Podcast and don't forget to subscribe if you're watching this video. Also give us a like or leave a comment on what you thought about the episode. But until next time, thanks so much for listening.